is and what it involves. How many of you are familiar with the term nonviolent direct action? It is not the narrowly defined civil disobedience, all right? It is applying pressure in all sorts of ways, not necessarily hostile or aggressive, all right, but it's just direct. I like to think of the difference between playing inside or outside. So, like there are people in the political world who they talk about, are they going to put pressure inside the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or are they going to put pressure outside the Republican or the Democratic Party? So with nonviolent direct action, we are working at 350 is working both inside and outside. So tonight we're going to be really focusing a lot on how we are going to be working inside. You're going to hear a lot about City Council and Austin Energy and the relationship between those two bodies, and also the Electric Utility Commission and how that plays into all of that. That's very much inside strategies working within the rules, so to speak, within the way things are laid out. Outside is where you're putting pressure to bear from the outside they call it direct, but it's non-violent, non-hostile, non-aggressive, non-violent. It can be very pleasant, it can be very polite. It can be something merely sitting in a prayer circle in the middle of a bank lobby. It can be something like that. The whole idea is that it's drawing attention towards the issue that you're concerned about. And the woman who is leading the training that several of us in this room have already gone through. How many of you have actually done the training? All right, so several who are here have already done the training with Eileen Flanagan. And Eileen Flanagan has made an arrangement with 350.org to provide the nonviolent direct action training. And she does it online. She teaches the course. It's 4 consecutive Monday nights. She always does them on Monday nights. So it will be 4 Monday nights in May. And she is of a Quaker background, and she works with the group Equate, which is Environmental Quaker Action Team, Earth Quaker Action Team. I knew I wouldn't get that right. Anyway, but it's pronounced, it's EQAT, but pronounced Equate. And so that is her background, very clearly nonviolent, peaceful, pacifist, so on and so forth, but direct action, helping people to build campaigns using nonviolent direct action. So it has been enormously helpful to us in 350 Austin in clarifying our focus, where we needed to move and where we needed to be, as opposed to trying to do 10 things not well. We're trying to be very focused, and we're going to be talking tonight, and Al will be talking a little bit about what that focus is. So does that answer your questions about the class?
What time on Monday night?
It's 7 o'clock her time, so it's 6 o'clock. She's in Pennsylvania. So it's at 6, and it's 2 hours for 4 weeks. And if you are interested, you sign up on that. There's a couple of clipboards going around just for NVDA sign up. If you haven't already signed up, sign up. And then I will send you a link to a Google form that you will fill out to tell us a little bit about it, whether to make sure it's a good fit for you, because 350.org is actually defraying a lot of the costs, and 350 Austin is paying for those. So people are getting the training for free, so we're asking that they make some sort of a commitment or an indication that they are committed to 350 or one of our collaborators. Any other questions about the course? Because if you're interested, just signing up on that sign-up sheet is not, you're not committing to anything. That just gives us the ability to pass on the detailed information. Any other questions on the course before we turn it over to our speakers? Or anything else having to do with it? Very good. Okay. So we're going to move into the more formal presentation part of our meeting tonight. Our 2 key speakers are Al Braden, who's sitting right here, and Stefan Wray. And what I've asked them to do is, because they both have a very rich background, what I've asked them to do is, as they begin their portion of the talk, to just take a minute or so to tell us a little bit about them and how they came to do the work that they're working with us on. Okay? So I believe, Al, you're first.
Okay. Let me get the computer fired up here. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Through the magic of collaboration, we have created this slideshow that's ready to roll. As soon as I figure out the right button push. I used to be a commercial printer, and collaborating with these guys, we just finished up the slideshow about 5 minutes ago. So as a printer, I would have said, no, we can't cut and fold those yet because the ink is still wet. But digital, you can do a lot, and we've got some animations which I'd never done before, so it's fun. So thanks to Rashad for pulling all this together at the last minute and collaborating with Stefan over the net to make this happen. Our campaign for 350 Austin this year is fossil free fast, and I don't know if I can say that fast, but fossil free fast, and it dovetails with what the city of Austin is trying to do, which is to get to zero carbon in our electric utility by 2030. So same thing, it's just fossil free fast is a little catchier, and that's where we want to go, and fast. Austin is lucky. Austin has its own electric utility, and therefore we have control of our own destiny in our hands with that. We can, through policy changes, change the energy mix. If we were in Dallas or Houston, El Paso, Fort Worth, maybe you could buy a renewable energy plan from some supplier. They would say, we're going to sell you green energy. But the only boat you would have is that little bit of energy that you were buying. You wouldn't be able to tell TXU, hey, close down that coal plant or close down that nuke. But through policy, we can do that. So here's the arrangement we've got. The City of Austin City Council is our board of directors of the energy company. And through them, they provide policy direction and budget direction to the city manager, who then the general manager, Jackie Sargent of Austin Energy, reports to the city manager. And of course, Austin Energy staff implement those. So this side of the picture here is the budget, the managerial reporting of Austin Energy. But the political and policy side is this whole side over here. And this is where we live. We're the green people, the citizen political input people. And we have a lot of influence at all different levels. First of all, we can actually meet with and talk to Austin Energy staff. Then Austin Energy, with their proposals and their reporting, report both to the Electric Utility Commission and to the Resource Management Commission. Sometimes they report to one or the other, depending on what the subject is. When it comes to planning the generation process, they actually have to go through both. And these are both citizen advisory committees, and we're lucky Stefan Wray is one of the members of the Electric Utility Commission, and he'll talk a lot about that later. But these citizen advisory committees are appointed by council, and they kind of vet and study all these issues and then make their recommendations to the Austin Energy Utility Oversight Committee, AEUOC. And the AEUOC is a committee of the entire city council, but when they sit as that committee, they're dedicated only to Austin energy issues. And that I'll show you in a little bit is really important. So we can attend all of these meetings, we can participate in all of these processes, and that gives us a lot of input to change the policy, which is to get to zero carbon, which then city council directs Austin Energy to do. And so we have control of that where we wouldn't if this was a publicly held utility. So going forward, At City Council has what they call citizens communication. You can give a 3-minute talk at any City Council meeting, and they take the first 10 people to sign up. The sign up is online, and the sign up slots are gone very, very quickly. So you have to get on the city website, find the calendar, find out when the slots for a given meeting are, and be there waiting when they open up. But once you do that, you can address City Council on any issue you care about. You talk about fossil-free fast, talk about buses and transportation, whatever it is that you want to bring to the attention of council, you've got that opportunity at noon on every City Council meeting. You can also speak to the Austin Energy Utility Oversight Committee. And here's Steve Mann doing just that. And for these slots, these people meet monthly, usually the last Wednesday of each month at 1:30 in the afternoon. And there's usually 5 citizen sign-up slots. And that's usually on a little notepad at the back of the room when you walk into the meeting. So if you intend to speak, get there early and make sure you get a slot on the notepad. And if you intend to show visuals, get there early, get on the notepad, and then talk to the AV guy and give them your chip with the slides on it, and you've got your 3 minutes. When you do this, you're presenting directly to the same City Council, but they've got their Austin Energy hat on, so they're more of an Austin Energy frame of mind at this point. Now, Austin Energy, some background. It's an electric utility founded in 1895, 8th largest in the country. It's a $1.8 billion company. It's a big outfit. It's got thousands of employees. It's huge, and it has a big and sometimes ponderous management, but something on that scale would. But it also contributes about $100 million a year to the city general fund. That's the profit of the utility that goes to the city budget, and basically means that $100 million a year or less in taxes have to be collected to balance the budget. So it's Austin's profit for owning the utility. It is run like a business, a big business. It's fiscally responsible, and its name is important to our bond rating. It's to the city of Austin's reputation in the bond market. It's very important that things be managed well and that we keep a high bond rating. But it's accountable to the shareholders, and all the citizens of Austin, the ratepayers of Austin Energy, are the shareholders. Over the years, they've done some really great things. They were the leader in wind energy in Texas. They're now the leader in solar, we'll get to in a minute. They're also working on some battery projects to experiment with and find out how batteries can really help make renewable energy work more better. In addition to just storing it, but also how to make it better minute to minute to kind of take out the variations in renewable energy. They're good at green building, and they've got a really world-beating electric vehicle plant. So they're doing their part to make the transition to electric vehicles possible. In the overall power generation mix, 2,750 megawatts is the peak usage that Austin has had, and that was in the summer of 16. And so this is the amount of energy that we've got to have available on those summer afternoons. And that's for it's 450,000 accounts and about 1 million residents. This is a chart from Austin Energy's website, and it says renewable 32.4%. That's about where we are right now. We're going to be at 35% by 2020 on average, but this just happens to be on a particular afternoon. And these things go up and down minute by minute. You can watch it change. I think on a 15-minute basis, it's updated. But this is a great example. On April 8th, we were 32% renewable. The solar farms were shining brightly out in West Texas, and the wind was still doing pretty good. So Austin Energy is a leader in wind, solar, and EV in Texas. The power mix that we have, the old stuff is fossil and nuclear. We've got three gas plants. The one at Mueller is pretty small, and we won't really get into that. The Decker gas plant is supposed to close by 2021. And the Sandhill plant is pretty new and efficient. It's it's a good gas plant, but it's got to close too by 2030 if we really need to get off fossil fuels. So that's a topic that really hasn't been dealt with yet in our generation planning. This one will close, this one will have to close. The coal plant is scheduled to close in 2022. And two things about that. One, we have to keep our eye on the ball and make sure they do it. And two, if we could do it any sooner, that's way better. And then the South Texas project is nuclear, and we have just a 16% share of that. So we don't really control what happens with that. I guess we could sell our share, but we can't shut it down because we're just a small end of it. Yeah.
About what percent comes from coal right now from that plant?
About 20 to 30% of our total power comes from the coal plant.
So do we have a plan for replacing that when it closes in 4 years?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's to get more wind and more solar and try to, build that up. And we've been really gradually up the solar very, very fast. We bought, I can't give you numbers related to the closing of this. I don't know that we've got those written down anywhere, but we've bought 600 megawatts of solar that was to offset the closing of that gas plant. And we'll have to do the same here. And when we get to the nuclear plant, we'll have to get some more. Now, in terms of renewable energy, we've got wind scattered all over Texas, from the Panhandle to Sweetwater, which is around Abilene area, Coast, which is around Corpus, and down in the Rio Grande Valley. We've got 1.3 gigawatts, or 1,300 megawatts of wind power. We've got, and that represents about 10% of Texas' total wind power. We've got 1,616 megawatts of solar and 150 more that we just added by contract this December, which should be online by 2020. So Austin has about a third of all the solar in Texas. And we have a couple of other little incidental plants here that are using biofuels. We used to burn the methane from the landfill, get a little bit. And then we bought a wood chip plant a while back. And no environmentalist that I've ever spoken to can identify being in favor of that, but we did it. And I think what happened, Austin Energy was under pressure to get renewable energy back at a time that solar just wasn't feasible, and so they did what was available. So we got to live with that for a while. But the generation planning process, generation planning means talking about planning the electrical generation hardware, what's going to generate our power. That's what it's shorthand for. In 2007, climate change became a real widely discussed issue. And that's kind of where I got involved with the inconvenient truth. But maybe that was a coming out for a lot of people, but it really brought a lot of attention. City of Austin responded with their first climate protection plan, and their plan was to get city operations to zero by 2020. In a lot of cities, when you look and they say we're going to be carbon free, they really mean city operations. And so Austin was very successful in electrical power because they just bought a lot of their own green choice power and powered all the buildings with that. That took care of electricity. They're a long way behind on fleet. They don't have very many electric vehicles. They don't have electric garbage trucks, buses, and so forth. So that's an issue that the new city manager is coming to deal with right now. But in 2010, they said we also have to get our electric generation down to 30% by 2020. And then they added an affordability metric we'll talk about later to balance that. So in 2014, we took a deep dive and had a new generation planning task force that really looked at everything from the ground up and came up with a lot of pretty groundbreaking recommendations to get Austin to zero carbon by 2030. And we passed a resolution 157 in August of 2014 that said reducing CO2 from all city-controlled generation to zero by 2030. And to balance it, it had to meet the affordability metric of being in the lower 50% of cost, but Austin Energy's rates had to remain in the lower 50% of cost for the state of Texas. And that's on the next slide, excuse me. 100% by zero by 2030, and 65% of all energy by 2025 is supposed to be renewable. And that was really gained by a bunch of activists on city council and by a bunch of activists in the community who stayed up late at night and stared down the council when they tried to go home at night. The mayor checked out, went home. The mayor pro tem, Cheryl Cole, said, "We still have a quorum, we could reopen this meeting." These guys said, "We're not going anywhere until you do." And so Cheryl Cole, Mike Martinez, Chris Riley, Kathy Tobo, Laura Morrison called the meeting back to order, and we got it going. So that resolution gave us zero carbon by 2030. It also had to be balanced by being in the lower half of rate structure for the state, and we couldn't have rate increases more than 2% a year. So here's Kathy Tobo, Richard Halpin, a bunch of people celebrating that night. But what happened is the affordability wasn't really there yet. In 2014, solar was still too expensive. We couldn't really get to where we wanted. We believed that by the time 2030 came around, we'd be there. But Austin Energy put together a proposal and said it's going to cost $1 billion more over 10 years. They scared everybody and won the PR battle at that point. But 2014, electricity cost 6 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour from solar. Now it costs below 4 cents. So if we run those numbers now, we'll win the affordability battle, and renewable energy will be cheaper. So here's the way the planning process has gone till now. A whole bunch of people sit around the table and say, you know, I think I'd like some more solar. I'd like a bigger battery. I'd like some more local solar. I'd like some more renewable. And then Austin Energy goes and models that, and they come up with something like this that still makes me mad, because there's nothing about this that tells you what's affordable. It doesn't give me anything to go on. So I wanted this. Is that affordable? I don't know. So what happened is the council didn't know either. There was no clarity on affordability, no explanation of how they got there. I want to turn that whole thing around, and let me go back to when we did that last August. Leslie Poole and the mayor pulled out a bunch of issues from the generation plan that had been proposed by activists and hadn't got into the plan, and they said, we want these studied, and we want them studied by September of 2019. The key ones: construct a model that achieves both 75 and 80% renewable energy by 2027. That's what 300 people came to City Hall and demanded. And we didn't get it, but we got this study, and we got council telling Austin Energy this is what we really want. They also said construct a model that achieves 100% carbon-free by 2030, and also assess the feasibility of 100% renewable by 2035. I thought that was backsliding, but what it really means is you have to close the nuke. This nuke's not renewable. Kathy Tobo also said the council reaffirms its continued interest in achieving the city's fire protection goals, reducing emissions as quickly as possible. So what Kathy Tobo is saying, we want fossil-free fast. So these are our demands, that they do that study as soon as possible so we have time to review it and implement everything that's feasible, and we find the obstacles to make and knock them down. So instead of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what works, we want to set the goal of fossil-free fast and then turn around and figure out what we have to knock down to get there. Thank you.
All right.
Let me introduce Stefan, who's actually doing this stuff.
Yeah. All right. My name is Stefan Wray, and I've been involved with 350 Austin since it started, and I've mostly been working on the investment campaign. I should say the investment team. It's not really a campaign at this point. It's a small group. I also I work for the city of Austin with Austin Public Health. As another city hat, I'm also on the Electric Utility Commission. So I was appointed by Council Member Sabino or Pio Renteria pretty much right after he was elected. So I've been on this commission for several years now, and my term expires in February of next year. So I'll be there all through the summer and the winter. So Austin has a lot of commissions, a lot of boards and commissions that I'm sure some of you are all very well aware of. And they all have a similar structure in that each council member and the mayor get to appoint a person to serve on that commission. So the Electric Utility Commission, I think, is one of the oldest ones. It's from the 70s. And its function is advisory. It's an advisory body, makes recommendations, doesn't make final decisions. The types of things that the commission deals with include electric rates, fuel costs, customer services, capital investments. At each meeting, we approve procurement plans that go forward to the council for final approval. New generation facilities, selection of fuel types. We review Austin Energy's budget every year. We review a strategic plan and building procedures. And this is a selection of things we do. A lot of other things that we do with this commission. So right now, these are the members of the commission. There are 9 currently because there are 2 open seats. Billy Garza and Jimmy Flanagan have open seats. So you can see, if you know who your council member is, you can also see who the associated commissioner is. So that could be someone's name you might want to remember, because if you go and talk to the commission, not during commission meetings, but through email or phone, you might first thing to call the commissioner that represents your district. So now, Michael Osborne used to be an Austin Energy employee. He's really big on electric vehicles. David Tuttle works at UT and has a PhD in, I don't want to say, some kind of engineering. I don't want to say mechanical engineering, but maybe electrical engineering. He's very big on the electric vehicles, and they're part of a study group that's working on that right now. Some of these members are new. Marty Hopkins is new. Jim Boyle is relatively new. Suzanne Vaughn, I think, is fairly new as well. Karen Haddon used to be the chair. Is involved with the Seed Coalition. Is always very much on the side of renewables. Will support this effort to go fossil free fast. And yeah, that's enough characterization of the folks. I'm sure some of you in the room know a little bit about them as well. So typically, the EUC meetings are on the 3rd Monday of every month. If it doesn't work out that way, if Monday's a holiday like Martin Luther King Day or any other holiday that's the 3rd Monday. And as noted earlier, we meet at the Austin Energy Building on Barton Springs Road. And this is a fairly standard structure of the meeting. Like I said, we deal a lot with the procurement and purchasing, so we'll deal with a lot of consent items at the beginning of the meeting. A lot of those aren't very interesting to the public, I think. And then staff reports and items from the commissioners. So people can speak at the meeting at the beginning during citizens communication, but people can also sign up to speak to specific items. So there's several different ways to stay informed about what the Electric Utility Commission does. One is obviously to attend the meetings, but You don't have to do that. You can also watch the meetings. I'm not sure if you can watch them on ATXN on the internet, and I'm not sure if they're. I think sometimes they may be simultaneously broadcast. Does anyone know?
They didn't used to be,
Yeah.
so if they are now.
Yeah, but for sure, you can go to the city's website and you can watch previous meetings, and you can. That's a good way to do it too, because if you see the agenda, if you go to the Electric Utility Commission's website. By the way, all the commissions have their own websites where they post the agendas, the minutes, background material, and you can go to the Electric Utility Commission's website now, and you can go back and listen to the conversations that occur. And I actually recommend this. This is a good homework assignment. I recommend going to the Electric Utility Commission's website and pulling up the agendas and meeting information from, I think it's July of last year, June of last year, where there were conversations about the generation plan that was being put forth at that time. Because then you can get a sense of the perspectives of the commissioners. Some of them are not there anymore. But you can also listen to the counter arguments that staff had to some of the proposals of the generation plan. And I think that's really important to understand the counter arguments. I think it's important I would recommend watching that, learning from that. And we can maybe send out more exact information about where that, we can go to see that. So attending meetings, watching the reruns on ATXN are good ways to stay informed. So ways to have input. We've obviously discussed speaking at citizens communication, speaking to a specific item. I mean, you can just go up there and speak, but also it can be better to actually have written comments that you don't have to read verbatim, but something that's in writing to hand to a commissioner. This applies to speaking before any commission, city, really, and council. If you have images and videos, that will definitely enhance your presentation and make commissioners be more, pay more attention, especially if it's interesting topic. Emailing the commissioners, calling the commissioners, or asking to meet individually. I've never had anyone ask to meet with me. I'm sure it occurs, but that is an option. And you may think about meeting with the commissioner who represents your district, and that can be effectively an opportunity. So, some tips on citizens communication. Have a core message, but avoid repetition and redundancy. I've listened to some commission meetings where people got saying the same thing over and over again, and I started to get bored. If I'm getting bored, I'm thinking that some of the other commissioners are getting bored too. So just change the message around. Have a core message, but have some middle part where it's your own unique thoughts. If you're in a group of 10 people, split the message up into different components. Have different people tackle different things. Come at it from a different angle. You only have 3 minutes, so you really have to sort of pare your thoughts down. You can also record it, not the thing up. You can also combine your time. You can donate time to another person, so someone else can speak for 6 minutes or 9 minutes. So also, I think it's really important. A lot of times people go down to city council and they just start yelling at city council members saying, this is all bad, blah blah blah. But you need to have an argument that's supported with facts and evidence. It's always better. This is what I'm going to say. This is the key message. This is why it's important. These are some key facts to back it up. This is what I just said. Please do X, Y, or Z, whatever you're asking them. And this is also important. It looks like just because nobody says anything, they just all sit up there and don't say a word. It doesn't mean they're not listening. There's oftentimes during citizens communication where the commissioners won't respond. They're not technically not supposed to engage people during the citizens communication, but sometimes that does occur. So again, as a final point, This is what we're demanding right now. We're demanding that the generation plan study for carbon-free 2030 done as soon as possible, and find the obstacles and solutions to make fossil-free fast. So, any questions for Al or I? Should probably come up here, Al, as well. We'll probably get more questions than ever. Go ahead.
So I have a question. Can you go to the last slide, the one before this? So, no, the one after that. Yeah, that one. So, I'm interested in the first one, demand the generation plan study for carbon-free 2030 is done as soon as possible. Many of us who have experienced working with Austin Energy have come to understand that the way they do studies is they often buy somebody who's going to do the research, who has a tendency to be more interested in responding to what Austin Energy wants than to do a free and independent study. So my question is, where are we in this generation plan study? Has the EUC approved anything? And
No.
If the EUC
My understanding is that Commissioner Haddon has asked that a report on the status of this study by staff be given to the Commissioner at the meeting.
So the study is actually underway?
No. So, on the status of why we have not started it? What needs to occur before we can kick this off?
And you will remember the study that they did a couple of years ago that caused such a furor because of the results of the study and the way it was handled. So I'm just wondering, do you have any sense at this time the commissioners will be more able to guide the Austin Energy staff into doing an actual independent study?
I don't have any insight into that. I mean, I think that if the commissioners hear from the public, that independent study is sort of over and over again messaged into their heads, and then that becomes the key message to the staff, and it has a higher likelihood of being independent study. I mean, they're independent in the sense that it's a third party, but like you said, a third party doesn't necessarily have to be independent since they're,
And I remember when we kicked around after the boondoggle of the last study was that the city auditor, who is independent of Austin Energy, actually works directly for the council, might be able to do the study more objectively. And the funds,
that's a good idea.
The funds, of course, for the study could come directly from Austin Energy. He's going to pay for it anyway. They just give the money to the Austin auditor, and she does the study. And there's a far likelihood. I called her and asked her about it. She said, "Yeah, we could do that. We got the people to do it. And we got the people we could get to do it if the council wanted us to do it, or if the EUC wanted us to do it."
It's a good idea.
It's my understanding that we're talking about Austin Energy doing these studies in-house initially. I mean, that's kind of what I understand was asked for. But if that's not satisfactory, we would then build a lot of pressure to have it be done independently. What Karen Haddon has asked for is at least a status update of who's doing what with these 9 items. And when, we need to pay attention to that and then kind of regroup and figure out who to push for an independent study or is this being done okay?
I want to go back to what was said about the study. That's my notes. Because I remember asking about subsequent studies, and this doesn't remind me, it was told to me that into the commission that they basically would use the same model that they had and just plug in new numbers, new market numbers, dealing with this cost of solar and all this sort of thing to come up with new analysis. And that would be an in-house plan.
Right.
So we need there are a series of questions that we need to ask and find out exactly, like, is it going to be in-house? Is it going to be contracted out? How independent is it going to be? All that sort of stuff.
Just as a follow-up, Al mentioned earlier, Austin Energy has a tendency to put up numbers. And the numbers they put up sometimes are dubious, it appears, in retrospect. and they use the numbers to make their point.
I was looking forward on solar.
They have been rarely until recently begun to look forward on solar. So it just, it just strikes me as we don't want to repeat the same way we've done things in the past, that you have a internal bias, known or unknown, and you want to get fair and objective information.
I think to just answer that quickly, my goal is to start with the answer and work backwards instead of just throwing more stuff at the wall. So I hope to get council to tell them, start with the answer and work backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, to that point, to this, I do have a question, but this method of studying is inherently flawed in a way because it's based on our current knowledge. And like what you just said, starting from the goal, which is 100% renewable energy, I use the example of Tesla as an auto manufacturer. They just said, we're going to make the most badass electric vehicle possible. And the study was the practice of getting there. So sometimes these studies can be just misdirection for the industry to buy time. We have to remember also that solar is a primitive renewable technology because there are many technologies that have been suppressed from humanity, and it's not crackpot stuff. This is real. So anyway, my question was, do you all know anything about the $189 million that was spent on the Fayette coal plant for this year's budget?
Specifically where those funds go? I mean, not without looking at the budget.
Yeah. I guess
Have you looked at the budget? Does it say?
Well, it says for the stated purpose of meeting federal emission standards, and so they're spending $189 million on the Fayette coal plant to update it to meet emission standards.
You're talking about this year.
This year, in this year's budget, $189 million. By the way, which could have bought us 189 megawatts of solar.
Yeah. Well, they spent $200 million on the scrubber back in 2010 and just no paying off.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it spends that big a procedure, but we have to see it.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious if you knew any of why we're putting that money there as the best.
That come before the UC, you Paul still.
The budget did, and I don't remember that conversation about that specific.
Yeah, that would have been like a like a landmine going on.
Yeah.
How can we help?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're
Can you help?
going to break into work groups and talk and do that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
I think
So
our
my
goal is to get
apologies.
people
Yeah.
involved in this
Yeah.
process at a bunch of different levels, the EUC being one of them, and learn more about the process and become politically visible in the process at the same time.
Yeah, so we're once the Q&A, the general Q&A is over, we're breaking up into four work groups. Conti is going to talk more about power in Austin, I guess more detailed on how city council and government works. I was going to go into more about the relationships with the Electric Utility Commission, maybe a little bit more for those who aren't familiar with speaking and providing input to the commission on some examples about how to go about that. And then Martha was going to talk about bringing creativity to our campaigns, and then Al was going to go into a more deeper dive into the generation plan. That was going to be for about half an hour after we finish our Q&A. And are we on time right now?
We are on, you have like a couple of minutes left of Q&A, but if there's more questions, we can do that before we split
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, does anybody have any more questions?
Yeah, I just have a question because I have to run early, but I'm just curious, are we gonna like take a documentation of all the ideas that are put forth tonight and then consolidate that somewhere? Was it a minutes or something?
Well, I'm not sure which ideas you're talking about. You're talking about what emerges from the breakout groups?
Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of depends on the group as to whether or not it's going to be generating that kind of stuff. But what we're going to be doing is to kind of tie it back in with the nonviolent direct action, is that as we're working on pressing various levers within the system, we're also, as an organization, going to be looking at how can we apply pressure from the outside? Not necessarily working within the system, but, you know, who do we need to bird dog? Who do we need to, go in and sit outside there also? So those are the kinds of non-violent direct action that we're going to be looking at as well. Not to be in your face, but to put pressure on, to kind of keep the pressure on so that City Council, Austin Energy, the commissions, whoever it is, they really understand we want to get there faster. That we really, as a planet, we need to get there faster. And so we're going to do, again, the inside-outside strategy. And so some of the inside stuff is going to come in small groups tonight, but, creative, artistic activism could be very much on the outside, street theater or whatever.
And just one observation, or just follow up on that, is that Austin is known for being one of the most progressive and accelerated cities to renewable energy, and yet we know that it's too slow. And so just to stress that urgency of what Austin does sets a precedent for many other places. And so we can do it.
Has anybody mentioned next week's meeting? We need to run.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, actually, so, very good point. So one of the ideas is that people go to the Electric Utility Commission next week and sign up for citizens communication and urge them to start to focus on this and to ask the commission to make sure that staff does in fact come back soon with some ideas about what they in fact do plan to do with this. Once they do that, and if they do come back in May with a report, that would be another good meeting for people to show up to at their May meeting, and then we might have a better picture about what their current plans are with respect to this, and then we'll be in a better position to respond and know how to respond to that. So those are the two things coming up. So that really answers Rashad's question: how can we help? How can we help? Is to show up next Monday at the Utility Commission with 6 o'clock with some prepared comments about why you think we need to speed up this process and when is it going to occur.
And I would also add that it can be useful for the physical presence. So in other words, if you picked up a 350 Austin t-shirt and you wear your t-shirt, even if you're not someone who wants to communicate, your physical presence, you're just simply demonstrating 350 Austin is starting to pay attention to what that. And it doesn't have to be hostile or aggressive at all. You're just there with your 350 shirt. And there's a whole bunch of you right here.
I think paradoxically, this is a really good time to get involved. And at first I was thinking, well, this is a lull. We just did this in last August. It's a 2-year cycle. Everybody's checked it off. They're done. They're ready to do something else for a while. And yet, if we come in this lull and say, we're still paying attention, we're still interested, and we want to get ahead of your process so that we know we get a better outcome next time. We want to see drive that process as much as we can. This is a good time to start because they're not expecting this yet. They're expecting a year from now to think, oh, I've got to do something by September. So let's get on them now. And so
Absolutely.
by the time September rolls around, we'll all know a lot more, be a lot more engaged in this, and a lot more effective. So it's a good training and engagement time, I think.
Thank you all for sharing.
Okay. So is it time to sort of split into our groups? So what I'm going to ask, I think Stefan did a quick rundown. What I'm going to ask each of the group leaders to do is to come up, take 30